Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpada Shankaram Lokashankaram. My respects to everyone who is present here. So now today particularly I feel really happy that I have been invited for this function to speak on Soundaryalahari. Soundaryalahari, a wave of beauty. Lahari is a wave, and you have been riding that wave of beauty all these days. You have been doing that Parayanam of at least a few shlokas, if not the entire 100 shlokas, at least a few shlokas you have been doing Parayanam. And talking about Soundaryalahari, in fact, I felt like giving a sort of introduction to Soundaryalahari because we have got so many texts. Today you read Soundaryalahari, tomorrow you're going to read Vishnu Sahasranama, or you are going to read Lalita Sahasranama, or you are going to read some other text. And then you will be wondering whether what is told in Lalita Sahasranama is right, or in Vishnu Sahasranama is right, or in some other text is right, or in some other text is right. This sort of problem is not there with other people, but with us, as means with the Hindus, the problem is we have so many texts. In other religions, they have only one text. They are called the people of the book. So they have got only one text and probably some commentaries on those texts, on that particular text, or some elaboration on that text. But we have got so many traditions and so many texts. So that is why Swami Dayananda Saraswati called us the people of the library. They are the people of the book. We are the people of the library. So we have to know where exactly to place a book. When we take a book, where exactly to place it? What exactly is this place? So for that, Vedanta comes to our rescue. Because how to place a book in its proper place, if you want to do that, Vedanta comes to our rescue. So what is it? Because we have got so many traditions. So many traditions. For example, we have got the Shiva tradition, we have got the Shakti tradition. Shiva tradition means the people who hold that Shiva is the supreme, and all other deities are rather number 2, number 3, number 4, etc. Or sometimes they also say they are all various forms of Shiva. They are all various manifestations of Shiva. And Vaishnava, they also say the same. Vaishnava, they say, yes, Vishnu is the supreme. And what you call Shiva, then Brahma, or Indra, and all these people, they are all various forms of Vishnu. If you take Shakti, in the very first shloka, you have come to know Harihara Virinchadibhirapi. Harihara Virinchadibhirapi. All these people, they are actually praising you, they are saluting you. So that means Shakti, what we call Shakti, or sometimes we call Lalita. So that Lalita or Shakti is the supreme. And then all other people, either are her children or her associates, or her own various forms, her own many various manifestations. So that is what we see here. So when we come to, for example, some Puranas which are called Vishnu-oriented Puranas, you have a particular hierarchy of gods. Hierarchy means it doesn't mean that all those people, they do exist. They are all various forms in the same reality. Because Vedanta, what is told in the Vedanta is actually fitted into that Vaishnava tradition, or Shaiva tradition, or Shakta tradition, or Ganapatya tradition. How? Because what does Vedanta say? If you say that, if Vishnu, people say that Vishnu is supreme, and Shaiva people, they say that Shiva is supreme, and some other sect says that he or she is supreme. Then what exactly is the reality? Do we have so many? We can't have so many supreme realities. That reality is only one. So what is the reality? So if you have to know that, we have to come to Vedanta. Vedanta means particularly the Upanishads. And if we are not having time or capability, or at least opportunity to go to the Upanishads, we can at least know about the Gita, the commentaries on the Gita. Thoroughly, we have to go through the commentaries very thoroughly on the Gita, and also some Upanishads also simultaneously. If we see, we come to know that reality, or supreme reality, or highest reality, what we call God, is not some person who is sitting in heaven. Is not some person who there is no place, some three-dimensional space somewhere hanging in the skies. And God is not a person who is sitting there somewhere in the skies. What we call God is not a person at all. Not a person at all. It is an impersonal entity which is defined as Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. In Taittiriya Upanishad, it says Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Similar words are, they do explain the nature of Brahman or supreme reality in various texts, in various other texts, or various other Upanishads also. We have got Asthulam, Ananu, Asanga, so many terms are there. And the crux of it is that what we call reality is not a person, but it is infinitely existing consciousness. If we want to see, if we want a translation of that Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, Shankaracharya has written very elaborately on that. Very elaborately, he writes what is Satyam, what is Satyam doesn't mean truth in the sense that I am now speaking, you are all listening. It is a truth, not in this sense. Sat means that which exists, that which always exists. Past, present, and future, always there's something which is eternal. So Satyam, that is infinitely existing consciousness. Then what are all these things? What we talk about Shiva, Shakti, and then Vishnu, and various other forms, Ganapati, Saura Sampradaya, that is relating to Surya, that is sun god, that is another Sampradaya also. So similarly, there are so many Sampradayas or traditions. What are all these? These are all various forms which are visualized in the same reality. So that is where we are. These are all various things which are probably which were already there in the tradition and which have been assimilated or which have been harmoniously brought in by the not by later people, right from the Upanishadic times. So that is why when we do puja every day in the morning, when we say that some of the shlokas, some suktam from Mahanarayana Upanishad, we say Sa Brahma, Sa Shiva, Sa Hari, Sa Indra, Sotshara, Paramaswarat, what you call the supreme reality which is manifesting in you, that is not, that is the same as Brahma, that is Sa Brahma, Sa Shiva, that is Shiva, that is Vishnu, that is Indra, that is Prajapati, that is Akshara Brahma. So in this way, and again in Mantra Pushpam, again they say, Tvam Rudrasvam Brahma, Tvam Vishnu, Tvam Prajapati, you are that, all the forms there, one. Purusha Sukta also says, Sarvani Rupani Vichitya Dhira. All the forms, there is only one reality which is taking up so many forms. And of course, you come to this Gita also, you got so many terms, shlokas, so many places we say that there is only one reality and all these vibhutis, manifestations, they are all there. And then again, you visualize that supreme reality. What is that supreme reality? When we say it is not a person, then it cannot be a man or a woman. There's you can visualize that reality in the form of a man, in the form of a woman, in any form. There is no other form. Nasri, Napuman, Nashandaha says Upanishad. It is neither a woman, and neither a man, nor a woman, nor a eunuch, nor any particular person. So that it is not a person at all. So you can visualize any form. So that is what we have to first realize. That is actually our uniqueness. Our uniqueness is we don't have any objection to visualize that supreme reality in the form of in a feminine form, because particularly this is something which is very, very offensive to some people. For example, very recently, only a few days ago, we saw that writer Salman Rushdie was stabbed because in his book he had written some of the verses which were supposed to have been there originally in the text, where they accepted some of the female goddesses. So that was a great offense in that culture. So we don't have any such problem. You don't have any such problem accepting a woman, accepting a child as a goddess, any form. And finally, what the ultimate reality, we don't deviate. Ultimate reality is that one. And from that reality, you visualize all these forms. So that is what is the basis. We have, that is the first framework in which we have to understand any text. Any text. You take Vishnu Sahasranama, you put in that particular category, and what he says about Vishnu is same applicable to Shakti. What he said about Vishnu there is applicable to Shiva here. The stories may be slightly different. Symbolism may be slightly different. Vishnu symbolism may be slightly different. Shiva symbolism may be slightly different. Shakti symbolism may be slightly different. But then the reality is one. Stories are different. So that is all. And now with this small background, we now come to the text Soundaryalahari. A few minutes I'll speak. Because as Brindaji said, there are Jnana Vruddhaha, Vayo Vruddhaha, Shila Vruddhaha, as Ramayana, Valmiki says in Valmiki Ramayana. There are so many learned people here, and I'm just presenting my views. I have not done much Parayanam of this text. Parayanam means Param Ayanam. This is the supreme path. Param Ayanam means Param is highest. Ayanam is path. This is the highest path. So in that, you have to take a book, and then you have to take a text and then keep reading it and then know about it. So I have not done Parayanam because it is a complicated text. It is not a simple text. At a simple level, you can find some Vedanta. But then this text is a combination of mantra shastra, tantra shastra, and for every mantra there is, for every shloka there is a yantra. For every shloka there is what is called upayam. That phalam. Phalam is you do this, you take this shloka, you recite, you do japam for say about 1,000 times or so, whatever is the number which is prescribed here, and for a particular result. If you want a particular result, you want some wealth, you do this japam of this shloka. You want some political power, you do japam of some other shloka. You want something else, so you do japa. So for various purposes, because a human being is a person who needs some God. You see, if you tell that reality is, it is only some supreme reality, is nothing but infinitely existing consciousness, etc., the common man is not bothered. Common man wants a form, either some God with some access, with whom to whom we can have some access. We have some access to the God, and we pour out our grievances before Him, and then we make some requests, and then we also get some boons. We also get the result, because that is again there. It is not as though it is not there, because the power of that consciousness, because we are also the same, we also have the same consciousness, or in the sense the same consciousness is reflected in all the antahkaranas of all the beings. All then, that is why we say sahasra shirsha purushaha sahasrakshas sahasrapat. When we say all the antahkaranas, that is all the antahkarana is that what we loosely call the mind, which reflects the supreme consciousness. All these antahkaranas and all the limbs, all the sense organs and all the motor organs of every living being, not only the human being, but all the living beings, they are the heads and the limbs of that supreme, that one cosmic form. So that means the human being is on par with a small ant, a small mosquito. He is also a jiva. The ant also is a jiva. Pipilika also is a jiva. So the jiva, the antahkarana is the same. The reality which is present in that is same. Ontologically, as they say, ontologically, a man is equated to an ant or an elephant or a dinosaur or a small microbe also. So it is like that. So that is how we see the reality which is manifest in all the beings. So the human being wants some form. He wants, the very most primary level is we worship the reality in what is called a sakara and saguna. Sakara means a particular form. It may be Krishna, it may be Vishnu, it may be Shiva. A particular form is there. And also saguna. Guna means some attributes. So he is a person who blesses people, and then who, restores order if there is some disorder in society. That is what we say avatara. And if there is some disorder, he restores order. And he is the person who comes down and then redresses our grievances. So that is what we see about sakara and saguna form. And a slightly higher level, if you see what is called a nirakara. In our tradition also, for example, Patanjali Yoga, Sankhya and Yoga, and also Tarka. These three schools, they accepted one Nirakara. Nirakara means a formless God, but at the same time, he is able to, listen to your requests and then answer your requests. That is what Gita also says, yo yam yam tanum bhaktaha shraddhayarchitum ichchati. Whoever in whatever form comes to me, I respond to them in the same form. And he also says, you worship any other form, I don't feel angry. I have no anger for those. If you are worshipping any other god also, I am not angry. Yepi anya devata bhaktaha, that is in the 9th chapter of the Gita, we say, Yepi anya devata bhaktaha yajante shraddhayanvitaha, he says. So like that, we accept all the forms. We don't denounce any form. We don't say, yes, you are on the wrong path, etc., etc. A person, he is worshipping some god, and then he will attain the purity of mind and purity of his conduct by worshipping that. If he is achieving those two things, that purity of mind and purity of conduct, then what else do you want? So let him worship a tree, let him worship a hill, let him worship some other form. It is okay. Then the final level is, after the Sakara and Saguna and Nirakara and Saguna, the final level is what is called Nirakara and Nirguna. Nirakara means that which has no form. And also, it is something beyond all these things. It is not even bothered about this creation, not even bothered about who you are. And then, Nadatte kasya chit papam, nachaiva supakam vibhu. Gita says some shocking statements. Nadatte. We usually say that, oh, God is there to take away our or rather reduce our sins or take away our sins. God clearly says, Krishna clearly says, Na adatte kasyachit papam. He doesn't take away anybody's sins, nor is he there to give you punyam. Your punyam or papam depends on your own actions. So that is what the Gita says. So Gita, if you see, it makes really shocking statements. But then, with all these things in the background, we do need some form. And that is where we come to books like Lalita Sahasranama or Soundaryalahari, and in Soundaryalahari or Vishnu Sahasranama, whatever it is, or various other texts also. So here you see the very symbolism of Lalita. Now we come to this Soundaryalahari, this goddess Shakti. Then the very first shloka says Shiva and Shakti are again inseparable. Shiva is again, what is Shiva? When you conflate, or rather when you combine these two, Vedanta on one side and this Shiva tradition on one, the Shakti tradition on one side, Shakti tradition, when we say Shakti tradition, Shakti is supreme. So if you mix these two things, what is the symbolism here? Shiva is that consciousness, and consciousness has a manifesting power, what is called Shakti. Shiva and Shakti are inseparable. There is no difference between Shakti and Shaktiman. That is Shakti, Shaktimato, Rabhedaha, they say. That is Shakti, that power, that Shiva, that consciousness is the what we say in Vedanta, we call it substratum or adhishthanam. That substratum is there, and that substratum is manifesting as the whole universe. And that manifesting power is what is called Shakti. And Shiva Shaktya Yukto Yadi na bhavati, na bhavati, Shaktah Prabhavitum. Shiva Shaktya Yukto Yadi na bhavati, Shaktah Prabhavitum. Nachaya Devam Devo na Kalu Kusala Spanditum api. So if the Shakti and if Shakti were not to be there, Shiva has no, you can't even know Shiva. You are able to know Shiva only because you are there in the form of an Antahkarana, which is another form of that Shakti. That manifesting of manifesting power is manifesting actually in the form of the whole universe, including you and me. And because we have what is called the mind, we are able to know that there is something beyond it. If this Shakti were not to be there, you would not even have a chance to know that there is something called that absolute consciousness. So, and also this is how we see. And Shiva and Shakti, the symbolism, if we see, broadly we see in two forms. One is that Lalita. Lalita, if we see the picture of Lalita, Shiva is there on a bed or something like a bed. He is reclining, and on him this Lalita is seated. For a long time before reading Vedanta, I never knew why this lady is sitting on him when this man is sleeping. So the symbolism is Shiva symbolizes that consciousness, pure consciousness, and the manifesting power is there in the form of the Shakti. And another way in which Shiva and Shakti are combined is that Ardhana, very famous Ardhanarishwara, the half Shiva and half Shakti, that Ardhanarishwara. So here we find these two ways in which the Shiva and Shakti are shown. So this is what we see in the very first couple of shlokas. And probably Shankaracharya, when we see the shlokas, some of the shlokas, the descriptions and all that, some people have gone to the extent of saying that no, there is a lot of Shrungara in this. Shrungara means some shlokas which talk about a person trying to win over women. Vashikarana, what we say, winning over women. You know, that was also one madness for some people. So anyway, the one sloka was read out just now, Naram Vashiyamsam, Nayana Virasam, Narmasu Jadam, there is some such a shloka. So there again, what does it mean? All these Girvana, Ganika, they just run after him. So, seeing all these descriptions, many people have gone to the extent of saying that it is not by Shankaracharya, but some of the people have also said, no, 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 it is not like that. Shankaracharya, he wrote, in fact, in his short life, by about 8 years of age, he had learned the whole of the Vedic literature. And again, by that time, he had also learned what is called Kavya Shastra, that is Alankara Shastra, and all this, the what we call poetics in English. So all this literary that what we say that knowledge of literature he already had. In fact, one king comes to him and then recites various some of his works, and then Shankaracharya he tells what are the whether it was wrong or right, and then Shankaracharya remembers it also. One king, I don't remember the name of the king, so that king comes and recites when Shankaracharya was still a small boy. So Shankaracharya, some people say that he could have written maybe in his teens, maybe in his 15, 16 at the time. And probably his intention was when he was seeing various un-Vedic or rather non-Vedic or rather crude forms of worship, he wanted to bring about some sort of refinement in the form of worship. Because in this book also, Soundaryalahari also, there is what is called Vamachara and Dakshinachara. Vyoma-samskrta-pathasala means trying to appease or propitiate the god or goddess by some sacrifice. By sacrificing means by killing some animals or with one's own blood, and sometimes giving meat and then giving various other things, and maybe sometimes worshipping on dead bodies. So all these crude forms, very crude forms, very unrefined forms were there. And Shankaracharya, we know that he censored all those crude forms, and then he brought about some refined forms of worship in various traditions. So that is the reason why he was called Shanmata Sthapanacharya, when he went around and then saw various traditions and then he tried to refine them. It seems when you go to Kanchi also, in that temple, probably there was some worship, some sacrifice which was going on there. So the temple priest of that Kanchi, he will tell you a story. If you go to the temple priest and ask him what is the story of this Kanchi and how Shankaracharya came here and all that. So Shankaracharya brought about some refinement, and he studied so many traditions which were there at that time. And then he saw what were the major traditions. In India at that time, there were 6 major traditions. Those 6 major traditions, he said, yes, let these things be there. And all other traditions, like Kapalika, Chapanaka, and so many other forms which were very, very crude, and they were also not part of it's not according to the Vedic tradition also. So such traditions he censored, and then he rejected them and harmonized all these traditions. In fact, he was the person who harmonized. Had it not been that harmonization, of course, Shankaracharya did what is already there in the Upanishads. Shankara, as I said, Upanishads also say, Sa Brahma, Sa Shiva, Sa Hari, Sendra, etc. And Upanishads very, very clearly say that a person is supposed to see the divinity in everybody. You see Rudradhyaya. What is Rudradhyaya? Rudradhyaya, you worship various, what are all the people whom you see in the society, all people. Namo Mahadhyah Shullakebhyascha Namo. You salute the great people. You salute also the not so great people. You also salute the thieves. You also salute a potter. Kulalebhyah Karmarebhyah. You worship a potter, you worship another man, you worship somebody who is making bows, who is making some chariots. And all these people whom you see around you, they are all forms of that Rudra. They are all divine forms. So seeing divinity in everybody is something which is the basic cornerstone of our Vedanta philosophy. That is what we have to remember. So here also we find that Shankaracharya, he tried to refine and then bring in that Shakta tradition into what is called Samayachara. Samayachara, or what is called the right path in which all those older traditions were removed. Older traditions means all those crude traditions were censored. So that is how we see that Shankaracharya included some of them. You see, if you totally reject, people will not like it. So he has also stated some shlokas. Okay, you visualize this goddess in this form, you will get this result. You visualize goddess in this form, and then do upasana. There is a word called upasana also in this. Upasana means what most of us we know the word upasana. This upasana means an intense meditation on a particular idea of God. Shiva means there is a symbolism around Shiva. So you intensely meditate and try to raise yourself to that state. Upasana, the person who does upasana reaches the stage of that deity on whom he is meditating. So, like that, like the Shiva, in this also, there are shlokas which are meant for meditation. Upasana means Taila, Shankaracharya in one place he says, Taila dharavat tulya pratyaya santatihi. Like a stream of, if you take some oil and then pour from a beak, the mouth of that beak, it forms a thin, long thread. It doesn't form in small droplets. It is a long thread. So, like that long thread, our ideas, the thought flow, or rather the thought stream, has to be uniform and then undisturbed by dissimilar thoughts. So, that is how Shankaracharya describes. So, this upasana, many of these shlokas here are meant for upasana. And in this upasana, you visualize the whole universe as the goddess herself in the form of the whole universe. And that is how in one sloka he compares this moon and the sun as the two breasts of the goddess. In another sloka, he refers to them as Surya and Chandra, that is sun and the moon, as the two eyes. And you find such a beautiful poetry. There is wonderful poetry in this text, and the whole universe again is nothing but this goddess. And if you just take a couple of slokas also, you see, Taniyam Pamsum Tava Charana Pankeru Bhavam Virinchis Sanchanvan Virachayati Lokan Avikalam. All what we call the cosmic functions called the creation, sustenance, and what we call resolution or destruction. Brahma, Vishnu, and Rudra. From your feet, they have taken a small speck of dust or some little small portion of dust from your feet, and then they have Brahma has created and this universe, and then Vishnu with great difficulty, Sahasra, what is this Sahasrena Shirasam, that Shauri Kathamapi Vahati. Somehow, Shauri, that Vishnu is able to manage. And then the same Hara, that is Rudra, is doing this Samhara, or rather, he is resolving the whole universe. So, in our system, we don't have that linear, say, idea of time. You see, when was Prakriti, when was this universe created, means it is something we can't say. That is, it is Anadi, we say. Anadi means it has been there infinitely. It has been there infinitely. There is not a particular time in which God came and then created the universe. That is why we don't have a linear concept of time. We have what is called a cyclical concept of time. There is a Srishti, Sthiti, Laya. There is a Srishti, Sthiti, Laya. It goes on and on and on, and any number of Srishtis have taken place. So that is how we say. So this three, what do we find here in this shloka? The three deities whom we call Brahma, Vishnu, and Rudra, they are nothing but your own forms. And again, we find what is called, say this, Manmada. I heard this shloka just now. Ratinayana Lekhyena Vapusha. Ratinayana Lekhyena Vapusha. I think it is in shloka number, shloka number 5. Yeah. Haristvam Aradhya Pranata Jana Saubhagya Jananim Puran Ari Bhutvaya. Hari, Vishnu had worshipped you earlier, and then he took the form, a female form, and churned the mind of Shiva. When Vishnu took the form of a lady, he literally, Shiva was so shaken. So that's a wonderful story there. And Smaropitvam Natva Ratinayana Lehyena Vapusha Muninam Apyanta Prabhavati Mohaya Mahata. It's a wonderful, you see this coinage of words. Ratinayana Lehyena Vapusha. We know that Manmata is the god of love, and his wife, her name is Rati. And she is so fond of her husband, that is this Manmata is so handsome that she is licking his body. She is licking his body. How is she licking his body? With her eyes. With her eyes, she is licking the body. Rati Nayana Lehyena. With her eyes, she is licking the body of Manmata. Such a beautiful expression. You see such expressions in several places. You see in several places throughout the text. And Muninamapi Antah Prabhavati Mohaya Mahata. You saw that gentleman, that Manmatha. The very name Manmatha is very interesting. Manaha Mathnati iti Manmatha. That is one who churns the minds of people. When Manmatha enters, the mind is so totally churned. So, in fact, we have to. I wanted to give a small request to the Vyoma lads. Kindly conduct some course on Sahitya Shastra also. Sahitya Shastra, that is something like Kavya Prakasha, maybe one Lakshana Grantha and also one Lakshya Grantha. So Kavya Prakasha, some little bit of Kavya Prakasha, and some little one good text like Meghadutam or something like that. So that nowadays we find that the youngsters are so ignorant about literature. What exactly is a metaphor, what exactly is a simile, and then how these similes and metaphors and what we call imagery, all this imagery are used in literature. One has to read literature if one has to have a slightly rounded personality. Nowadays, we find the people just going for, particularly our Indian kids, we just go to IITs and then go to engineering college. Everybody is an engineer, a boy, girl, everybody is an engineer. And then nobody knows a poem. Nobody knows a poem from any kavyam. Nobody knows either from his own native language or Sanskrit, leave alone Sanskrit, not even native language. So maybe it will be a good idea. I request Vyoma people to take up, teaching some basics of Srungara also, because Srungara, we find in this text, Srungara is so very well portrayed. Because in fact, Devi, this is Lalita, Shakti, she is supposed to be she is supposed to be having all the rasas in her. There is one sloka. I have noted the sloka. She is she is a personification of all these rasas in so many different forms. All those rasas are seen. And there are certain poetic commonplaces, as we say. The poets, they have got some particular descriptions. So that those descriptions we are supposed to know. So if we want to enjoy the good poetry. So anyway, this coming back to this subject, Vishwan, the whole universe is said to be her body. And in this text, as I was saying, it is very, very difficult to speak on this text. You see, if I know literature, I enjoy some 10% or 20% of the text. If I know Yoga Shastra, I enjoy some 20% of the text. If I know something more, Tantra Shastra also, I know something more and I can understand slightly more. If I know Vedanta also, I will understand something more. But if I know only Vedanta and if I don't know Tantra Shastra or in some practice of yoga, because all these chakras they have been described here, that is Muladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, and then Anahata, Vishuddhi, Agnya Vishuddhi, and then Agnya Chakra and Sahasrara. All these chakras rising from one level to the other. The lower chakras they symbolize usually the sensual aspect of a person, food, drink, and enjoyment, merriment, sensual enjoyment. Slightly when you come up, then activity, physical activity, and then achievement and things like that. And again, slightly when you go up, then you come to thinking, a little bit of thinking, and then something associated with the knowledge. And then what is called Atma Vichara, the inquiry into the nature of self. So that is where all these texts come in, and this text talks at all levels, from a common from the level of a common devotee who wants some sort of he wants to pass some examination or he wants to get some good result in somewhere, from that level to the highest level of moksha. That is, in fact, the shlokas you find, for example, if you take one shloka like yeah, I didn't note all those shlokas. Anyway, you see, for example, the very first shloka itself, not very first, in the very first few shlokas only, we find how this Shakti, she is somebody who will give all the four purusharthas. We know that there are four purusharthas: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. And she is the person who gives all the four purusharthas. That is the dharma, the righteous path, artha, what you mean, money, not necessarily money, but all the resources for the well-being of a human being. Then again, kama, all the desires, the fulfillment of desires, and at the level of again at the level of moksha. Moksha means release from all these things. In fact, the goal in human life, according to Hinduism, is you enjoy artha and kama in the framework of dharma. That is why artha and kama are sandwiched between dharma and moksha. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Artha and kama, these two are sandwiched between dharma and moksha. You enjoy you earn artha, enjoy kama in the framework of dharma, then you become eligible to go to that next level called moksha, and in automatically we don't get. Then again, we have to do some atma vichara. We have to do some atma vichara. That is, you have to go to your guru and then study what exactly is atma vichara, and then rise above all these, rising above all these limitations, rising above all limitations of. A person is born free, but he is bound with so many things. The moment a person is born, there is a stamp. You belong to this religion, this sect, etc., etc. You are this, you are that. And in addition, we also acquire some degrees and then some labels. You are this, you belong to this particular department. You are a doctor, you are an engineer, etc., etc. You rise above all these limitations, and then you realize that you are not different from that supreme reality and you are one. So that is what this sloka says. And so the structure of the text also, if we see the first 40 shlokas, they are more serious in nature. They are more serious in nature means they give so many there are so many complicated verses there. That means unless you have some knowledge of yoga, you know, knowledge of Tantra Shastra and all that, you will not be able to decode all those shlokas. For example, all these, the konas, all the so many chatuschatvarim chat, that is 44 angles in that Sri Chakra. All those things you should have some knowledge. You have to probably learn from a teacher only. And at the end, what the result of Parayanam, the result of this Parayanam I was just telling you, Parayanam is pursuing a particular thing, that this is the highest path I have to pursue. That is Parayanam. At the end of this whole Parayanam, the result is going beyond the Kamya, going beyond the Kama Atita Sthiti. That is what the scholars say. Scholars say that a Parayanam of this sloka, the entire Soundaryalahari, it leads a person to that Kama Atita Sthiti. So you are no longer in the level of seeking something. You are no longer in the level of seeking this or that, and then all that level you go rise above that, and then you are fit to fit for that Atma Vichara, and again attain that liberation, as they say. So that is what is the overall say picture. I did not read many shlokas into this, because if I want to read out the poems and then the beauty of the poems, there is a lot to say. For example, if I take the shloka number 59, just quoted some. For example, there is what is called a varnana, a description of the goddess from top to toe, from her hair down to every bit. Her brows are described, then her ears, her eyes, her nose, and then her lips, and then the chin, and then neck, and then practically every part of the body, down to the nail, the finger nails, and also toe, the feet nails, and all that, right up to that. Every bit is described. And the alankara, whatever are the ornaments, for example, the earrings, her cheeks are compared, are so bright, and then the earrings, they are reflected on her cheeks, and then the earrings and two earrings, and then two reflections. So they are looking like the chariot of Lord Manmatha, the god Manmatha, who is going to again show his strength on Lord Shiva, because this lady is near Shiva. So the two earrings, and then these two reflections, they are like the four wheels of the chariot of Manmatha, and then this Manmatha sitting on them is again going and trying to attack Shiva. So just one example. And for example, in some shlokas, again the hierarchy comes. For example, in one sloka he says, Indra, Kumaraswamy, and also Vishnu. They defeat gods in some battle, and then they come to this mother. And then this mother is so kind to them. And then at that time, she is taking some tambulam, tambula charvana. Tambulam is what we call pan in Hindi. I don't know if there is no English equivalent, because for English there is no English, for them there is no tambulam. So this tambulam she is taking, and then she takes out some tambulam, and then tambula kabala, small pieces of tambula to them, and then they eat that tambulam. That means they derive this. They are like the children that beetle leaf, and not only leaf, beetle leaf along with some other material we combine, and then we make it into a very nice combination. So that whatever is eaten by her and taken out from her mouth and given to them, they are eating. Probably Vaishnavite would become very angry if he reads this. But then Shiva, this Shakti tradition, if you see, the shlokas will be like that. If you go to Shiva, Vishnu tradition again, they describe in the same manner. If you see Venkateshwara Stotram, when Lord, other people like in Venkateshwara Stotram, there is a wonderful shloka where there are so many gods. There is such gods have all thronged in the court of Venkateshwara to have a darshan of Venkateshwara in the morning. And there are some divine policemen who are in charge of crowd control. And this Vishnu and not Vishnu, this Shiva and Brahma, Indra, and all those people are in the front row trying to barge in. And then this policemen, they are hitting on their heads. They are hitting on their heads with some soft sticks. So I forget that sloka. So like that, you find that hierarchy there in a different form. You find a hierarchy here in a different form. So we should not be confused, because the basic problem with our text is when we read this text, we see something. When we read some other text, we see something else. How to fit them? So if we want to fit them, if we want to know where exactly how to understand, you have to take it as just a story and not an absolute reality. You can't take it as an absolute reality. You have to you have to see it in the Vedanta framework. So that is how we have to see. Otherwise, we'll be terribly confused. And if somebody says, "Arey, you have got so many gods and all that," we are really we feel rather, diffident. Rather, we feel, helpless to explain it, because we have never read Gita, we have never read Upanishads. So, in fact, my strong advice always to people is, we have to know what are the fundamentals of Gita, the fundamentals of the Vedantic thought. So if we don't know that, then we will be in a problem. Not only that, in fact, we should also know some Sanskrit. If we don't know Sanskrit, if not talking very fluently and all that, at least we should know Sanskrit, so that we will know what we are reading and who is telling the right thing and who is not telling the right thing. Because the big problem with even highly educated people is, highly educated people also, they would never have read even the Gita. I find so many people, and such people maybe suddenly after retirement or some such time, it dawns on them, "Hey, I have to read Gita." Then he feels so totally helpless. And I hear many people saying, "Arey, I made a great mistake in my life. I have not learned Sanskrit in my early days." So don't give scope to that. There are many youngsters. There might be many youngsters also here in this group. My sincere advice to all these youngsters is, we have to know, otherwise no Sanskrit. Otherwise, it will be a lifelong handicap. You have to continuously depend on some English translation. You have to continuously depend on somebody who may be knowing and telling, who may not be knowing and telling. Nowadays, there are so many people who don't even read the, commentaries, and then still keep giving talks on Gita and management and this and that. I don't grudge, but then you don't find the crux of Vedanta philosophy from that. So if you want to know the crux, if you want to know the real essence of Vedanta, naturally, we have to have some knowledge of Sanskrit. So I think with these few words, without going much into the text, there are so many poems which you want to say, but then there is no time, and then it is not a it is not a session for appreciation of literature. If you want to have an appreciation of literature, this is a text. Some slokas can be taken, and then you see what is the alankara, that is the figure of speech there, and how beautifully the words are expressed there. So that will be another course, probably, knowing about the beauty of the poetry here. So once again, my pranams to Sri Shankaracharya, who is the originator of this great work. Though many people say that it is not the work of Shankaracharya, I tend to believe that it could be work of Shankaracharya because he was trying to refine a particular tradition. That is what he did. So probably he, in order to reject so many other things, he had to accept also certain things. So what he has not done in some other stotras, for example, if you take any stotra of Shankaracharya, they are mostly philosophical in nature. But here, not only philosophy, but there is Shungara, there is a wish fulfillment, that is Kamya, that is Kamana fulfillment. Then Upasana and all these things are there. So probably Shankaracharya would have written this probably in his younger days. And probably it is a good attempt to bring some refinement in that particular tradition. So that is how I feel. So with these words, I take leave. Again, thank Brindaji and also Soumya Krishnapurji for having given me this opportunity. And thank you, one and all. Thank you.